Dear listener, we now reach the 12th and final story in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Copper Beeches. This is one of the most unsettling, suspenseful, and memorable tales in the entire collection. It is a story of a young governess, a suspiciously generous job offer with increasingly strange conditions, an isolated country house surrounded by dark copper beech trees, and a sinister secret hidden behind locked doors and shuttered windows. Narrated by Dr. John H. Watson, the adventure begins with a seemingly ordinary advertisement for a governess position and leads Holmes and Watson into a web of deception, psychological control, and quiet horror. From the busy streets of London to the lonely station at Winchester and the gloomy mansion at Copper Beeches, every strange condition in the contract, every cut lock of hair, every shuttered window, every desperate cry in the night, every footprint on the gravel drive, and every brilliant deduction will unfold here in rich, vivid, and extended detail. Nothing of importance is left untold. Settle in as the trees cast long shadows over the house, and the mystery of the Copper Beeches begins. The game is afoot, and this time, the danger hides behind a smile, a high salary, and a pair of scissors. Opening scene: Miss Violet Hunter visits Baker Street. It was a bright spring morning in the year 1890. The sun shone pleasantly through the windows of 221B, Baker Street, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of early blossoms from the park. Dr. John H. Watson, was sitting by the fire reading the morning newspaper when the bell rang sharply downstairs. Mrs. Hudson announced a young lady who wished to consult Mr. Sherlock Holmes on a matter of some delicacy and personal concern. The visitor who entered was Miss Violet Hunter, a governess of about 25 years of age. She was a bright, intelligent young woman with a pleasant, open face, clear blue eyes, and a practical, sensible manner. Her dress was neat and modest, but there was an unmistakable look of anxiety and unease in her expression. She carried herself with quiet dignity, yet her hands twisted nervously in her lap as she spoke, and her voice occasionally trembled. Miss Hunter explained that she had been out of employment for some time and was becoming desperate for a suitable position. A few days earlier, she had answered an advertisement in the Chronicle for a governess. The reply came from a Mr. Geoffrey Rucastle of Copper Beeches, near Winchester in Hampshire. The terms offered were extraordinarily generous. £120 a year, more than 4 times the usual salary for a governess, with very light duties, a comfortable room, and pleasant living conditions. However, the conditions attached to the post were highly unusual and increasingly disturbing. Mr. Rucastle required that she cut her long, beautiful chestnut hair quite short. She must also wear a particular electric blue dress provided by the family. She was to sit in a specific chair in the drawing room for several hours each day while the family was out, and she was strictly forbidden from leaving the house grounds or communicating with anyone outside without permission. Most strangely of all, she was told that if she objected to any of these conditions, the offer would be withdrawn immediately. Miss Hunter was deeply torn. The salary would be life-changing for her, but the eccentric and restrictive conditions filled her with growing unease and suspicion. She had come to Holmes for advice. Should she accept the position, or was there something sinister and dangerous behind these peculiar demands? Holmes's careful assessment and warning Holmes listened with intense concentration, his eyes half closed and his fingertips pressed together in his characteristic pose. He asked detailed questions about the exact wording of the letter, Mr. Rucastle's description, the size of the household, the other servants, and every small detail Miss Hunter could remember. After careful thought, Holmes said gravely, "There is something very strange and potentially dangerous in this matter. The unusually high salary, the eccentric conditions, the isolation of the house, and the demand to cut your hair all suggest that Mr. Rucastle has some hidden and likely unpleasant purpose. I strongly advise you not to go. However, if you are determined to take the post despite my warning, I will be ready to come to your assistance at a moment's notice. Send me a telegram if anything unusual or alarming occurs, and I shall come to Winchester immediately." Miss Hunter accepts the position despite Holmes's clear warning. The financial temptation proved too strong for Miss Hunter in her difficult circumstances. She accepted the position and traveled to Copper Beeches. For the first few days, everything seemed tolerable, though the atmosphere of the house was distinctly oppressive. The mansion was large and gloomy, surrounded by a dense grove of dark copper beech trees that gave the place its name and cast long, gloomy shadows over the grounds even on sunny days. Mr. Geoffrey Rucastle was a jovial but oddly menacing man with a constant broad smile that never seemed to reach his cold eyes. His wife was a silent, pale woman who appeared terrified of her husband and rarely spoke. There was also a young child, Edward, who was unusually cruel and malicious for his age. Miss Hunter was required to wear the electric blue dress and sit in a specific chair in the drawing room every day while the family was out. From her seat, she could see a small outbuilding with a shuttered window. One day, she noticed a shadow moving behind the shutter. She also discovered that a coil of hair exactly matching the color and length of her own, which had been cut short, had been kept by the family, supposedly belonging to Mr. Rucastle's daughter Alice, who had supposedly gone to America. Most alarming of all, she began hearing a low, desperate cry coming from the shuttered room late at night. The telegram and the journey to Copper Beeches. A week after taking the position, Miss Hunter sent an urgent telegram to Holmes. "Please come at once. I am in great trouble. Hunter." Holmes and Watson immediately took the train to Winchester. Miss Hunter met them at the station, looking pale, frightened, and exhausted. She told them that strange and terrifying things had been happening at Copper Beeches. She described the shuttered room, the mysterious cries at night, the strange behavior of the family, and her growing conviction that someone was being held prisoner in the house. The investigation at Copper Beeches. Holmes and Watson accompanied Miss Hunter back to the house under the cover of darkness. Holmes examined the building carefully from the outside. He noticed that the shuttered room had a separate entrance and that the door was heavily barred from the outside. He deduced that someone was being held prisoner inside. Almost certainly Alice Rucastle, who had not gone to America but was being kept locked up so that her father could control her inheritance. Mr. Rucastle had hired Miss Hunter because she closely resembled his imprisoned daughter. The blue dress, the short hair, and the requirement to sit in a particular chair were all part of a cruel deception to convince distant relatives or lawyers that Alice was still living a normal, happy life. That night, Holmes, Watson, and Miss Hunter returned secretly and forced open the shuttered room. Inside, they found Alice Rucastle, weak, terrified, and half-starved, but alive. They rescued her just as Mr. Rucastle and his brutal groom arrived. In the struggle that followed, the groom was killed by his own ferocious mastiff, which had been set loose. Mr. Rucastle was badly injured but survived. The full truth emerged. Mr. Rucastle had imprisoned his own daughter Alice to prevent her from marrying and claiming her inheritance. He had hired Miss Hunter to impersonate her and maintain the illusion that Alice was free and happy. The child Edward had been taught to be cruel, and the whole household lived in fear of the tyrannical master. Closing narration and Watson's reflection, Holmes later explained every step of his reasoning with his characteristic clarity. The case had turned on small but vital clues: the unusually high salary, the demand to cut the hair, the specific dress and chair, the shuttered room, the cry in the night, and the mysterious coil of hair. Watson reflected that this adventure showed Holmes's remarkable ability to see through deception and cruelty hidden behind a facade of respectability. It also highlighted the vulnerability of young women in service and the terrible power some men wielded over their families. Miss Hunter later found a good position as a headmistress, and Alice Rucastle recovered and eventually married the man she loved. If your pulse quickened at the lonely house surrounded by Copper Beeches, your heart ached for the imprisoned Alice, and you marveled at Holmes's swift unraveling of the governess's strange conditions, then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle has succeeded in creating one of his most suspenseful and memorable short adventures. The Copper Beeches may cast long shadows, dear listener, but the game is always afoot.